All right. Hi, welcome back. All right. Up to this point in our P5JS lives, whenever we have wanted to, use an image via load image or whatever, we've been using the entire set of pixel data that comprises that image. All the, the rows and columns of pixels that make our image whole. So we've taken that whole entity and we've, displayed it at location 0, 0, let's say, and then the whole image shows up on the page. In the last video, we learned how we can apply a mask over that image, or we can do some other stuff with the P5 image methods. But we haven't really been able to drill into manipulating individual pixels within that image, and that's what we're going to do today. So over at the whiteboard here, I'm going to introduce you to a couple of new functions that are going to help us through this and give us the ability to edit pixel data. The concept, let's talk about the concept first. So whenever we're going to start probing and interrogating individual pixels, we're going to need to load that pixel information into P5's buffer, into P5's memory, so that we will know, so that array will be accessible to us, and we will know the individual pixels that comprise that image, and then can start playing with it. So there's a function in P5 called load pixels, which allows us to do just that. So we're going to talk today about load pixels, and then we're going to do some stuff to those pixels. We are able to either get information out of that image, get one or more pixels out of that image. So you could say, well, get pixel 100, 200, and it would go get the pixel that's at that location and extract that information. Then we could save it as a variable, or we could do something to it. And then we could also set the information in those pixels. So we could, perhaps take a pixel from one area of the canvas and put it someplace else. In fact, we're going to do exactly that today. And so, we can set pixels. And then once we have finished doing whatever it is we're going to do with our pixel array, we go ahead and then we update the pixels for that particular image, and it sort of pushes everything back into that image file, and then we can go ahead and display it. All right, so one example of that might be, let's say we're playing with that poppy image again. So it's an 800 by 500 pixel image, but for purposes of keeping this conversation simple, let's just look at, the first 5 rows and columns of that image. So, in the X value, it goes all the way over to 800. Down the Y-axis, it goes all the way to 500, but we're only going to concern ourselves with indexes 0 through 4, okay? So we might be able to do something like, so first we're going to start our manipulation process by declaring poppy.loadPixels, and it's going to get that pixel array for us to have it handy for us to use. Okay. Then we might do something like poppy.get, and then we may want location 1, 2 in our pixel array, and it will get for us that pixel right there, and it will return it to us. In P5, you can get either one pixel, or you could get a range of pixels. And if you wanted to get a range of pixels, you could do something like what we have here, where we said poppy.get in purple, start at location 2, 1, and I want to get 3 pixels over and 2 pixels down. And what it will do is it will extract that region from the image, and then we could save that to a variable, let's say, or do some manipulation to it. And then once we've done what it is that we want to do, we could do the opposite, where we could actually send pixel data back to our pixel array by using the set command. So you could say poppy set pixel value 2, 4, and then whatever value it is. So let's say, let me do something like this. Let's say over here we just said value equals poppy.get 1, 2. And we had some variable called value. And then when we put that value in here and poppy set 2, 4 to value, that pixel would go from here over to there. So that pixel value would be changed via that set command. And then once we are all done with whatever it is we want to do, we just go ahead and update the pixels, and then our image is pieced back together, and then we can go ahead and display it. So that's probably as clear as mud, but it's always a little bit easier to go through it in code. What I'm going to do here is call up Sketch 2. And before we go through this code, you'll see we have this little Harvard shield that we used a couple weeks ago. And in this exercise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new image that has the same dimensions as that shield image. Then I'm going to go through every pixel in that array of pixels that comprise this extension shield image. And I'm going to take whatever was at the top left corner, and I'm going to put it at the bottom right. And then I'm going to take the second pixel that was just 1 from the left, and I'm going to put it 1 from the right at the bottom. And I'm going to do that all the way through the image, and that's going to have the effect of completely flipping our image upside down and left to right. Okay? So that's the exercise in our head, but that's going to show us how we can use that get and set method in our pixel functions to do exactly that. All right, so here we are in code. Just to familiarize you once again, in preload, I am taking the shield. I have couple of variables that I've declared as shield 1 and shield 2. Shield 1 is the image as it comes out of the computer, and shield 2 is the one that I'm going to manipulate. Okay, so right out of the gates, I'm just preloading my shield image. I'm loading image here, assets shield1.png, and you'll see in my week 11.2 assets directory here, you'll see assets shield1.png. There it is, right? So we're good. Let me just get that folder out of the way. Okay. Just to get us started and get us feeling comfortable, I'm creating a canvas that's the same size as the image that we're manipulating. I looked at this data. It's not really a super convenient value, but this image happens to be 90 pixels across by 104 pixels vertical. So that's the canvas size that I created. It's just enough to hold my image. The first thing that I'm doing, just to kind of show us that we have something happening here, is I'm just taking the image, I'm drawing it via the image command shield, and then I'm putting it at left, top left, and then drawing it onto my canvas. So there's the shield as it exists without any manipulation. Okay? But let's shut that off because that's not really what we want to do. I'll save that, and now we're not going to show anything. Right? In here, I'm just going to uncomment this whole pile of code, and we can go through it line by line, and then we can do a big reveal. All right? So recall that up top on line 4, I created 2 variables. One, shield 1, which was the image that comes out of the computer, and shield 2 is this new image that I am going to create from the ether, create out of thin air, create an image 90 by 104 pixels, conveniently the same size as the image that we're going to be manipulating. Okay, so now it's a blank array. It's a 2-dimensional array of rows and columns that contains our pixel data. All right, so if you recall back on the whiteboard, I said that before we do anything to manipulate a new image, we have to load those pixels. So we have those pixels now in memory on line 22. We're loading shield 2's pixels via shield2.loadPixels. All right, and now is one of the times when you can appreciate how nested loops can come back and help us again and again. Nested loops are going to be the technique that I am going to use for all image manipulations. That's pretty common. That's how images get manipulated. If you're doing this kind of thing, you have to get yourself comfortable with nested loops. But you'll see that I'm going to go through each row, right? So I'm going to declare a for loop here. I'm going to create a for loop here on line 25 that goes from 0 to the height, right, of our rows, the height of our canvas. And then within that, I'm going to declare via another for loop. I'm going to have a loop that iterates through each column of pixels that we have on our x-axis. And for each of those locations, each of those xy locations, every row and column in our image, I am going to get the pixel information from shield 1, which you remember is our source image, and I'm going to assign it to a variable called myPixel. Right, so I'm going to have this myPixel that's going to grab something from our source image. So the first time through, x is going to be 0 and y is going to be 0. So I'm going to take that top left pixel, 0, 0, out of my source image. And what am I going to do with it? I'm going to put it in shield 2's image array, but in the exact opposite spot. So if I'm grabbing the top left pixel, I'm going to put it in the bottom right. Okay, so that's exactly what I'm doing on line 33 using the statement shield2.set, right? So set is putting something into the image array. And where am I going to set it? I'm going to set it at the width of the canvas minus the current x value, right? Which first time through is what? 0. So this is going to be 90, right? Because it's 90 pixels wide. And then height minus 0 is going to be 104 because it's 104 pixels tall. So I'm putting it at 90, 104. I'm putting that pixel that was at the top left down at the bottom right. Okay. Then I'm going through, dropping out of the going back and incrementing x to the next x value. So next time through this loop, I'm going to get the location 1, 0, and I'm going to put that at where? I'm going to put it at 90 minus 1, so I'm going to put it at 89, and then y is still 0, so it's going to be 89, 104, and so forth. I'm going to put the next pixel. I'm going to go all the way through the x values that way. Once I get to the end of the line, once x is the width, equals the width of our canvas, then I drop out of that x for loop, and I increment. Now my y for loop goes up by 1. And then I go back and start again. So now y is equal to 1, and then x is equal to 0. So now I'm on row 1, the second row, right? 0 and 1. Row 1, x 0, and all the way through. I'm going to go row by row, flip-flopping these pixels around. That's how this little piece of code works. It does all of that for us. And that's actually quite a lot of work because you figure, it's 90 times 104 iterations of that. And the bigger that the images get, the slower that this algorithm works, which is why we're going to do some other methods of pixel manipulation in the videos that follow that are a little faster. Get and set are not particularly fast, and you'll see that. Okay, so we've now gone through that for loop, that nested for loop. And once we're done, we have a new Shield 2 image array that's ready to go. So we can now update the pixels, kind of push that data, finish off that edit, and now we can display that image. Shield 2 is now going to contain that flip-flop image, and we're going to put it at 0, 0, and hit save and see what happens. Loading, loading, and then kabam. You'll see that, notice that there's a couple of seconds there where you see loading, loading. This isn't a very big image, and it still takes a half a second or so for us to, oops, sorry, I didn't mean that. It takes a half a second or so for us to complete that work, to go through this nested for loop. Actually, I originally had the Poppy image in here, and I was going to do that, but it just took too long. I didn't want to spend the minute or so that it took for my computer to process that. So get and set are pretty powerful. As you can see, you can do some cool stuff. Now, I did a pretty basic flip-flop the image, but you could just do some randomness where you could take an image, range of pixels in a particular image, and you could either like glitch it and take one section and move it somewhere else, or kind of make it look like things are kind of going haywire in the matrix. There's all sorts of possibilities here. I wanted to give a pretty straightforward example of how you can perceive what's happening here visually, but you will need to understand your nested for loops in order to traverse any image data. X and Y axes are commonly traversed with for loops like that. So that's how get and set work. And if you think about what happened between the last video and this video, we went from an entire image of pixels, right, that we could move or mask or whatever, to now taking pixels one at a time and manipulating them on the pixel level. But there's one step further that we could go, and that's to manipulate the subpixel values of each of these, right? So each one of these pixels contains what? We know that already. An R, G, B, and alpha value, right? So it's got an RGBA array. So really, this pixel array isn't just 800 by 500 pixels or whatever. It's 800 by 500 by 4 R, G, B, and A. And that's what we'll explore in the next video.